In every school, there are names we never forget. The class clown, the quiet one in the back row, the best friend we grew up with. But what if one of those classmates suddenly vanished? Not just from the classroom, but from memory itself? What if no one remembered they ever existed except you? In 2019, a story appeared online, written by a man who swore it had happened to him. In the post he shared, it was the spring of 2013 in Tianjin, just 43 days before the Gaokao, China's decisive college entrance exam, often compared to the SAT in the United States, though far more high stakes. That afternoon was their final badminton class. The teacher gave them a choice: play, or return to the classroom to study. Some left, while others stayed on the court. Among those who remained was the author Xiao Heng, who would later share this story online. With him was his classmate Xiao Wen. On the next court, another group was playing. In that group was Elle, a student from class 10. Beside him was Bowen, a boy the author had known well back in primary school. The groups merged. Xiaowen, Elle, the author, and Pan played together, rallies growing sharper, laughter cutting through the heavy spring air. For a little while, the weight of the exams faded. Nothing seemed unusual, until Pan struck one shot too hard and the shuttlecock flew into the basement of the abandoned dormitory. Pan admitted it was his fault and volunteered to retrieve it. The author offered to go with him, and another student, Elle, volunteered to come along. Xiaowen stayed behind, waiting at the court. So, the three of them crossed into the silent building. They expected darkness. Instead, the dormitory was bright with sunlight, though the air carried a faint chemical odor, unnatural and lingering in the empty halls. As they moved toward the basement stairs, they found the way blocked, chairs stacked high, piled like a barricade. The author hesitated, wanting to turn back. But Elle wouldn't stop. He climbed over the pile of chairs, slipping through the narrow gaps, and urged the others to follow. At the bottom, they found a door standing open, revealing a corridor that stretched ahead. At the far end, daylight streamed in. That had to be where the shuttlecock had fallen. They started forward, but suddenly, Pan stopped. He said his keys were missing, maybe dropped back at the chairs. The author suggested they split. Pan should go back and search, while he and Elle fetched the shuttlecock. They would meet at the court. They stepped into the corridor and began walking toward the light at the end. At first, their footsteps were steady, but the longer they went on, the more unsettling it became, as if the hallway stretched with every step. A chill of fear crept in. Their pace quickened, and then, almost without speaking, they broke into a run, fleeing toward the light. At last, they reached it. What they had thought was a window was actually a door. They rushed forward, pushed it open, and found themselves outside of the building. They saw children from the nearby primary school already walking home. The author and Elle exchanged glances. They had only gone in to fetch a shuttlecock, yet somehow, so much more time had passed. They rushed back to the court, but Pan wasn't there. Neither was Xiaowen. The author returned to his classroom. When Xiaowen saw him, he asked casually why they had taken so long. The author noticed Xiaowen had already brought back the rackets, but Pan's was missing. When the author asked about it, Xiaowen frowned and said, "Who's Pan?" At first, the author thought Xiaowen must have lost Pan's racket and was pretending not to know him. He argued with Xiaowen, but got nowhere. When one class ended, he met Elle in the hallway. Elle looked furious and pale. The moment he saw the author, he rushed to him and demanded, "How can no one know Pan?" Students spilled out of class 10 along with the teacher. Some whispered, "He kept asking about someone we don't know." Others muttered that maybe Elle wasn't right in the head. Even the teacher looked worried. The author and Elle ran back to the dormitory, but when they arrived, the heavy door was locked. The building that had swallowed Pan now refused to open again. Desperate for answers, the author went to the PE teacher. If anyone had the student list, surely it would be him. He asked about Bowen. The teacher frowned, scanned the roster, then shook his head. "There is no Pan Bowen," he said. "I don't know who you're talking about." It was the final blow. No classmates, no teachers, no records. As if Pan had never existed. By late afternoon, the teachers grew worried about Elle. He wouldn't stop asking, wouldn't stop insisting. They called his parents and told them to pick him up. And just like that, the only other boy who remembered Pan was gone. The author stayed quiet. He knew Pan had been real, but he didn't argue. Outwardly, he lived as though nothing had happened. Inwardly, he carried the truth alone. At school that day, through all the confusion, one thought stuck in the author's mind. Pan should be in my QQ contacts, a chat platform everyone in China used. When he got home, the author rushed to his computer, logged in, and scrolled through his friend list, then the class groups. But Pan wasn't there. Not in the contacts, not in the groups, not anywhere online. His chest tightened. If Pan had been erased here too, then what proof was left? He pulled out something older, his primary school graduation book. He and Pan had studied side by side back then. Pan's face, his name, had to be printed there. But page after page, there was nothing. No Pan in the photos. No Pan in the list. It was as though Pan Bowen had never existed. Not in memory, not online, not even in the records of childhood. Time passed. Exams ended. Life moved on. Years later, on the 18th of August, 2019, he finally told the story online. The date was no accident. It was Pan Bowen's birthday, the 18th of August, 1996. They had been close friends since primary school. He knew his birthday. He remembered their bond. It was his way of holding on to Pan, refusing to let him vanish completely. Comments flooded in. Some were fascinated, but many dismissed it as fake. Just another internet ghost story, they said. The author answered simply, "I wasn't chasing fame, and I wasn't making money. Why would I lie?" he asked. "I only wanted to remember my friend." Then he shared a private conversation with Elle. At first, Elle acted as if he didn't remember. But then, quietly, he admitted just enough. He told the author not to dwell on it, not to dig deeper. And then he wrote a single line that chilled more than denial ever could. "We should forget this and just get on with our lives." The post became so popular that people across the internet were talking about it. Some even went directly to the author's old school, asking if Pan Bowen had ever been a student there. In 2021, under that pressure, the author deleted the post himself and issued a clarification. He said Pan Bowen was never a classmate. He called him an imaginary friend, someone who had appeared in childhood and returned whenever stress pushed him to escape reality. He apologized to his former school and teachers. He admitted the post was unrealistic content. He clarified that Elle was only a friend, not a classmate, and that Xiao Wen, another figure in the tale, was someone he met only years later after college. But to many, this explanation felt like another story, a retreat under pressure. Was Pan really imaginary all along? Or did the author only say that to stop the questions, to silence the attention that had spiraled out of control? But what if Pan Bowen had been real? What if, on that spring afternoon, the author somehow slipped, passing from one universe into another? In this world, Pan never existed. But in another, maybe he still does.